Hello, and welcome to Message in the Middle with Marianne. We all know that life is hard, right? It's messy, it's unpredictable, but it can be wonderful all at the same time. My hope is that we can take a deep dive into self-development topics and explore life's lessons through book clubs, conversations, and interviews. And together, we can uncover the lessons that others have already learned to help us navigate this crazy, wonderful ride called life. Hello and welcome to Message in the Middle. I'm your host, Marianne, and joining me today is Jenn Donahue. Jenn spent her career breaking barriers in engineering, the military, and in leadership spaces, and she's here to help us rethink how we step into our power. Jenn is a retired U.S. Navy captain and former Commodore for an 1,800 personnel regiment. She's also a civil engineer who works on large-scale, high-profile geotechnical projects. She's an author and a keynote speaker. Over her 27-year military career, Jenn has built a bridge in the midst of the Iraq War, commanded an 800 personnel battalion in Afghanistan, and constructed combat outposts in the middle of deserts filled with insurgents. Today, Jenn is the founder of Jenn Donahue Engineering and Dare to Rise. She also lectures at U.S. Berkeley, UCLA, and Cal Poly. She's passionate about helping people overcome the obstacles that prevent them from achieving their greatest dreams and most ambitious goals. Jenn, thank you so much for joining me today and welcome to the show.
Thank you. I really appreciate you having me today.
So you've got this really strong background, I'd say a little bit of a badass. Have you or do you ever deal with impostor syndrome yourself?
Yes.
Really?
I know it's going to sound crazy with all of that, under my belt, but there's still imposter syndrome that creeps up from time to time. And it happens every time I try to step outside of my comfort zone.
I mean, I love hearing that because it's just a validation for people that we're all human. It's a human thing. And though we talk about the fact that the more you get comfortable pushing out of your comfort zone, it still creeps up. It's not like it goes away. So that's your experience as well.
Oh, absolutely. I would say though, whenever I was younger, it never really bothered me. I was crazy. I was brash. I was out there. I was doing everything. And then I had an episode where I fell really hard and it absolutely crushed my entire being of self. And I was trying to rebuild during that time and trying to find like, hey, who was that person that I used to be? And really ever since then, I have noticed that whenever I am stepping outside of my comfort zone, I get this mean little voice in the back of my head that's like, you're not good enough for this.
Yeah.
Or, oh, you're a fraud. You should just quit.
Yeah.
And it's like this little recurring voice that, even though I'm out there trying to do really great things, there's still that little voice kind of like tickling in the back of your head.
It's funny to me that you relate it starting after something, after you had sort of a knockdown, because they do say, right, that it comes from a place of protection. It's your body's way of trying to protect you. And so it's interesting that you tie it together with having started after you had that situation.
It's really true. We have instincts, we have intuition, and then honestly, I feel like we have this mean little voice who kind of tags along, and it's trying to, like you said, keep you safe, but at the same time, it's also trying to stop you from ever trying to grow again.
Yeah.
It's trying to stop you from ever having the feelings of a potential failure in the future.
Yeah.
So for me, that's not healthy. Instinct, intuition, cool. Like that keeps you safe, that keeps you alive. That mean little voice is really just trying to stop you from growing.
I agree with that completely. Thinking about the work that you do, a lot of it falls into I'd say the bucket of helping people break through, reframe their mindset, view challenges and obstacles as opportunities. If we had to give some real tactical advice to the people that are listening that have been thinking about something but just haven't really made the move, what are some steps? What are some things you could give them to tell them to sort of start going in that direction?
I will tell you, I don't believe in leaps of faith. So I'm not going to ask that of anybody. They're big, they're scary, and a lot of times they don't work.
Yeah.
As an engineer, my brain really likes to break things down as much as possible. And what I would recommend to anybody is start trying to find one tiny, tiny, small, manageable step in the right direction. I mean, make it so incredibly simple and easy that it seems silly not to do it. And just take that one little step. And here's the best part: reward yourself afterwards. Like, go out for ice cream, have a nice dinner, just give yourself a pat on the back or go for a walk around the block. But design that first little step to just go in that direction, and then find another little step just right after that. Don't make them scary. I mean, nobody wants scary. Looking up something on your computer on how to go in that direction. Make that the first step. Hey, that's pretty easy. You can do that in, half an hour.
Yeah.
But just make it so, so super simple. That's what I would recommend.
And build on that slowly.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm the person, and you just gave me that advice, and I say, but what if I, quote unquote, fail? I mean, the example you gave of looking something up is great because, you can't really fail, but I don't know. What if I really decided I want to tap back into my creative self, and I used to draw and paint and do all the creative things, and I haven't done them in 100 years, and I want to try again, but I'm afraid to do that because I don't know, I might look silly. I'm 60 years old. I'm making this all up, but I'm 60 years old, and I've been thinking about it, but I just don't want to put myself out there. What do you say?
Start small. Again, what is it that you love about this? And I would probably try to ask you to hearken back to whatever it is that you love, that you want to do that. And maybe start writing out, this is why I want to do this. And it's really interesting because I also study the brain. By the way, I'm a big science nerd. I'm a big engineering nerd. So you'll just have to deal with me because I study this type of thing. When we start to write down what we love and why we want to do it, what happens is that it starts to reconnect a lot of the synapses in our brain, and it makes it easier for us to think along those thoughts. So say that you do want to go out and you want to be an artist again. Okay, think about something small that you want to do, and then just write down what you love. How are you going to get there? And you know what? Try something small. You don't have to create a, ginormous canvas, that expands, everywhere. Just what is it that you want to do? Maybe it's a charcoal drawing. Maybe it's just a watercolor. What's the harm in doing that? Who are you harming by just letting your creativity flow? And I don't think you're failing because you're starting over again. I kind of think about skiing. I live very near a ski resort, and the very first time I get on my skis at the very beginning of the season, I'm going down the little green bunny slope trying to get on my feet again, and then by the end of the season, I'm back to skiing, blues and black diamonds. But it's okay to start off on that little bunny slope. Give yourself some grace. Don't be so hard on yourself. You're your biggest judge on if you fail or if you don't fail.
Yeah.
If you're doing that little charcoal drawing, if you're doing that little watercolor, whatever that might be, give yourself the grace to say, hey, I haven't done this in several years. This is a very good first start. What do I need to learn in order to go forward and make it even better? So that's what I would say.
I think that's great advice, and also sets the tone for starting to change the dialogue that you're having with yourself. So give yourself the grace and look at it with curiosity. What do I have to do next, right? Or what can I do on top of this without any judgment? I mean, that's a big thing. So yeah, great points.
Ooh, we are so hard on judging ourselves.
Oh, so hard. I mean, for many of us, at least for many years, it's the default, right? We immediately go to that position. So yeah, it takes a lot of practice to get out of that. I want to switch gears. I want to take us a little bit to the fact that when I think of your history and all the work you're doing, and probably still even the work you're doing today with engineering, totally male dominated.
Yes. Yes.
And I have to assume that came with some challenges along the way, assumptions being made. But you probably got a bunch of stories, but I wonder if you can share any one thing that stood out to you that really made it feel difficult to be a female in that space, and how you got through that.
It's a really great comment. It even started in college. There was only 2 women in my class. So I was an ocean engineer, small to begin with, but there was only 2 women. The rest were guys. I went into the United States Navy to become a civil engineer corps officer, and we were only 9% women. I mean, that's it.
Tiny.
Tiny. And so it was very typical for me to be the only woman in the room most of the time. What was probably the hardest was that this was in the mid 90s. This is whenever they were first letting women into the construction battalions. Before that, since 1942, they were all men.
Mm.
Well, in 1994, they started to let women in, and I was only the third female officer that the battalion had ever seen.
Wow.
Like it had just been men this whole time. And so that was really uncomfortable because they didn't know what to do with us.
Yeah.
We'd go on these field exercises, we're living in tents, and they didn't know what to do with the female officers because there was only two of us. Well, we can't have a ginormous tent to ourselves. It usually holds like 20 different people, but there's only two of us, and there's kind of a strict rule in the military about the enlisted stay with the enlisted and the officers stay with the officers. And so it was this really awkward period where they just didn't know what to do with us. And a lot of times, they were trying to overcompensate, and it was just really, really uncomfortable. There was also the other two females. I'll just say they were more feminine than I was. I was kind of a tomboy, so it wasn't a big deal. But, they were really, they wanted to wear their makeup every day, and a lot of times that really rubbed the guys the wrong way. And so they were making fun of them behind their back. And that was one of the times when I was like, okay, this is enough. You do not get to make fun of other officers behind their back, whether they're female or male. And so I just basically put on my mama bear and went in and just, told them, I was like, look, this is not appropriate. You guys know it's not appropriate. You would never do this to a male officer, and basically just sort of laid down the law, but that's sort of what was needed because no one had ever done that before. And I felt a need to basically stand up for these other women who might not have even known about it or knew how to stand up for themselves. And so, yeah, there were a lot of really awkward times, but it was also a time that we were forging something new. And I will tell you that today, nobody cares right now, at least in the CB battalions, if you're male or female. It really doesn't matter. It's like we're brothers and sisters. And I would say that we're probably one of the most integrated type of units that are out there. It's really, really come a long way.
Well, it must be neat to be part of that history and know that you made a difference there. I'm curious, though, as you're telling the story, and I'm thinking about you stood up to those people, but was there something innate in you since you were young that you were like, even just going into these fields and, deciding to do the military and do it in this fashion that was, such a cutting edge thing? Were you scared? Like, was there any second thoughts, or were you just like, I'm doing it and I'm charging ahead? Like, what's that look like as the younger you?
Yes, as I said, I was very young and brash whenever I was younger.
Okay.
And it was, what, and today I still relish people telling me no, no, you can't do that. I'm like, ooh, oh, that's a challenge right there. And so I am competitive. I am. And so it was one of those things where it's like, no, you can't tell me that I can't do this. I'm going to show you that I can do it. I'm going to do it better than you. And so that's just my own personal thing. But just a quick story. Whenever I was a sophomore in college, I went to my engineering 101 course and I sat right in the middle, halfway up. I had my little notebook and my mechanical pencil. And there was these two guys to my left, and they started snickering. And I looked at them like, what are you guys snickering at? And they're like, hey, you can't do this. You can't be an engineer. You're a girl. And I was like, oh, hell no. And it's just like, it was on at that point. I mean, it was on like Donkey Kong. I am going to like study harder than these guys. I'm going to do better than these guys. And, that's just my personality is like, don't tell me no. Don't tell me that I can't do something.
Yeah.
And like I said, even though I still get imposter syndrome, there's this other side of me that's like, nope.
So you've always had that drive. That helps to the messaging you're bringing today to help people try to turn it around. I've heard you tell audiences that the best way to get their workforce, their employees completely engaged, completely committed, really high achievers, is to create this environment of trust.
Yes.
When I think about the world today, and I think about the job market and corporate as a whole, I guess you could say other industries as well, like non-corporate, just as a whole, I think it's so far from a place that most employees can trust. So have you changed your conversation around that, or are you still hopeful that people can create that environment? I just feel like even if people trust their like immediate managers or supervisors or whoever they, kind of report to, whatever that structure looks like, it's so much bigger than that. It could be the company, it could be the industry, it could be the government, there's a lot, right?
Oh, yeah.
So what's the message now?
I still think it all boils down to trust. If you want to maintain your personnel, it has to start there. And really, it helps if it starts at the top with the CEOs, the executives. They have to learn how to trust also, because if you can do that, then it disseminates through the entire organization. And, maybe it's a culture thing. Like, man, we are going through some crazy things going on with the government that, I won't even get into. But if you want to really hold on to people, people are scared right now. They're afraid they're going to lose their jobs. It's not just the people in the government. I work with a lot of universities.
Yeah.
They're not getting the funding. And so they're worried about their cutbacks. I work with other people in like the USGS,
It's
and
everywhere.
everybody's worried about like, am I going to have a job tomorrow?
Yeah.
Because there's no trust.
Right.
Because it's all gone. And let me ask you, how productive do you think those people are at work? Probably not as productive as if they knew that they were going to be able to come to work tomorrow. Because it's always in the back of their mind, like, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? How am I going to provide for my family?
Yes.
Because it all comes down to trust. And so if we can do our part, and there's just some things that they're just out of our control, with whatever the government wants to do, that they're going to do it. But for those of us that are in academia, in consulting, that are just in the civilian sector, there's a lot that we can do in order to create basically an umbrella of trust, for our personnel, and basically letting them know that, hey, we've got your back, and no matter what, we're going to fight for you with everything that we have. When people know that, they're going to be able to come to work, they're going to be able to be more productive. And they're also probably going to realize, hey, this person has my back. You know what? I'm going to do what I can to help them because they're helping me. And so there's a lot that we can do. And so unfortunately, yeah, we're just in some really weird times right now, but it has to come down to trust. That's how you're going to maintain your people. That's how you're going to keep your efficiency and your effectiveness up, no matter where you are.
I completely agree with you. I guess I just don't think that it's commonplace anymore to be able to have that environment. I do agree. It's really the secret sauce to making everything kind of hum together and really, get to the next level. But I just think it's really hard to find these days. So I guess the only message I would add to anybody listening is that if you're in that place where you don't have the trust and you're very nervous about a situation, the only thing you can do is get yourself ready and put your trust in yourself, because talking about it all day and going back and forth and, getting hung up on the idea of the what ifs, you can just go crazy. I've been part of a culture where, after a couple acquisitions, the company there was like a cyclical workforce reduction. And you're right. People, they're not productive when these things are going on. And for weeks before and weeks after, maybe even months, there's such a loss of productivity. And the only thing you can take away from all of that is just, to focus on yourself and have yourself ready. So I just want to add that because it's a lot.
Oh, it's absolutely true. Everything you've said is absolutely true.
I wish it wasn't, but it is. So speaking of the government, which we're not going to talk about, but I am curious, in the military, did you ever have to carry out or execute on something that you didn't agree with?
That's a very good question. So there are things that I know that I can't talk about.
Fair.
So because of security clearance types of issues and things like that. But, a lot of times it might get down to, what you believe, maybe through religion or whatever it might be. But one of the things about the military is that you have to separate yourself from your own personality from time to time. So for instance, whenever we were allowing openly gay people into the military, there was a lot of people who had a very, very hard time with that and accepting that and allowing that to happen because that was on their own personal belief system. And as a member of the military, you have to realize, no, my job is a profession.
Yeah.
And so I can't let my own personal beliefs basically dictate how I act as a professional. And it's really a black and white type of situation. It's like you are basically ordered to work in this type of situation. And it doesn't matter what you believe, in your religion or whatever it might be, that is what you have to do. And so in some ways it makes it very black and white. And it also makes it a little bit easier. It's like, look, I have to treat everybody fairly. I have to do all of this. And that's what I have to do. and then you can go home and complain to your spouse. That's fine. That's absolutely fine. But other things, in combat, you might not necessarily agree with your boss, but at the same time, you have to realize, hey, you know what, they might have a bigger picture. And so, yes, we are going to go in this direction. And you do what you are really ordered to do. There are obviously unlawful orders. So if there's something that looks like an unlawful order, you basically get a hold of your JAG, which is your lawyer for your group, and say, hey, this doesn't sound right. And if it is an unlawful order, then yes, you can say, I'm not going to do this because it's an unlawful order. So there are ways that you can refuse an order as long as it's unlawful.
Interesting. I guess it's as I think about it, I was, I kind of put the angle on it of the military, but it isn't really different than working anywhere. You sometimes get the directive to do something that you might not think is the right thing to do, or, a decision that maybe you wouldn't have made, but ultimately you kind of have to go along with it. I mean, or leave, but you have to go along with it. And I do think taking the perspective of sometimes people, and it's true, sometimes people have more information than you. Sometimes people see things that you don't see because of the position they sit in. So I think we have to trust in that a little bit too. So, yeah.
I would also say, if you are in those types of situations where you feel like, I don't feel right about this, we should have the courage to ask why. And say, why are we doing this? Like, and have that conversation. I've had conversations like that with my boss where it doesn't seem like this is the right direction to go. And, I just very politely ask, can you please explain why we're doing this? Because this will help me also explain to my troops why we're doing it, because they're going to wonder why I'm doing, and it just kind of goes down. And then all of a sudden you get down to the junior enlisted and they're making up all kinds of wild accusations of why they're doing it. And so in order to control the rumor mill, a lot of times you just have to go and have that hard conversation of, please explain why we're doing this. And
that's such a great point.
Yeah. If we can do that, then a lot of times it's like, oh, okay, now I understand.
Yeah, that is a great point. And it also opens you up to getting different perspectives on things. So yeah, it's always a growth opportunity. What would you say is the best piece of advice you ever got?
Be yourself. Wow. I didn't do that for a couple years, and I was always just trying to be like somebody else, trying to emulate somebody else. It was exhausting. I never really had not a following, but people were always just sort of indifferent to you if you were always trying to be somebody else. But once I found like, hey, you know what? I can be myself. I'm very empathetic. I love to listen to people. I love to pull people in and get their ideas and like create a better plan. And instead of just saying, hey, you do this, you do this, you do that, but if I was able to bring people in and like we kind of brainstorm things, with all the subject matter experts, like, I think that's fun. And I think that's an even better way to lead teams. And once I started doing that, all of a sudden I've got people who are like, hey, where is your next duty station? I want to go after you, and it was kind of interesting because then I was also trying to help them as well. Cause I'm a big person to like to help people. I was like, what do you need to be promoted? As opposed to just being that person who sits behind the desk and tells people what to do. Oh, I was so much happier.
Yeah.
And the people around me were happier, and they were getting promoted and they were doing all kinds of great things. And I'm like, all right, this is cool. But I had to step back and realize, hey, you know what? I'm not being myself. If I am myself, what does that look like? And that's when it all started to click.
What a great lesson in teamwork too, right? Because you got the way you describe it is a well-functioning team where you're getting everybody engaged. They buy in on the quote unquote mission and they're part of it. So they believe in it. And of course, everybody's going to work towards, much harder to get there because they're part of the solution. So love that. Love that. It definitely helps to create really strong teams.
Absolutely.
So now that you're out and you're done with the military, is that a good thing? Do you miss it? Do you miss it? I'm just curious. Do you miss it at all?
There are parts that I miss. I think I miss the camaraderie the most. I miss the people that I've served with. I miss my troops. That's the type of thing that I really, really miss. No matter where you go, there's always like the administrivia that you have to do, the mandatory trainings. I'm like, okay, I don't miss any of that.
Right.
Definitely don't miss any of that. It's the people.
Yeah.
I miss the people. I miss being able to help people on a daily basis that are right there in front of me. What I'm doing now, I am helping people as well, but it's just so much more tactile whenever, you're right there in the conference room together and you're all together and you're trying to figure things out.
Yeah.
That's what I really miss.
It's always the people. It's always the people that you
Yes.
miss when it comes down to it. You can strip everything away, but you really do make some great connections that hopefully they can last a lifetime, even when you step away from something. I want to learn a little bit more about the work you're doing with Dare to Rise.
Sure.
So tell me about that.
I started Dare to Rise a few years ago, and I own my engineering company. I do high-end seismic engineering, but I had this pull to be a public speaker because I realized, you know what, engineering is great. I'm helping people, making sure that buildings and bridges and things like that don't fall down when we have earthquakes. But I wanted to get back to that ability to reach out and touch people. So I decided to become a public speaker. And I've been all over the world, and it just didn't make sense to have an engineering company that had a speaker. So I created, I know I'd like say, okay, well, you can write the check out to Jenn Donahue Engineering. And they're like, what? And I was like, okay, probably should come up with like a new company name. So I created Dare to Rise. And so Dare to Rise is my company where I go out and I speak to people, I give workshops, I coach. And this is the part of my life where I'm able to give back. And I want to try to help as many people on this planet as I can, to help them be the best that they can be, to help them be better leaders, to help them learn how to trust. That's what Dare to Rise is all about. It's like taking where you are and just daring to be better than that. And that's what it's all about.
What do you think holds most of us back?
A lot of us have these limitations that we put in our head. Oh, I can't do that. Or, oh, if I do that, I might fail. It's all these things. I would say probably 80% of them is things that we put in front of ourselves so that we can't go do something. The fear of failure, self-doubt, the fear of success. A lot of people have the fear of success, impostor syndrome, all those things that we put on ourselves. I would say 20% is probably those external obstacles that we have. Think of the glass ceilings. Think of those people who are always saying, no, you can't do this. So there's also these external obstacles that we might have. So Dare to Rise is all about figuring a way that we can get over both of those. And I would say for the external obstacles, what I like to say is we're all warriors on the inside. Let's all band together as warriors, create our own army so that we can figure out a way over these types of obstacles.
I love it. I used to say, famous for the saying, what's the least bad decision, right? If we can't do what we really want to do, what's optimal, what's our least bad decision? How can we? What can we do?
Right.
There's always something, right? There's always something you can do, even if you can't do exactly what you wanted to do. So yeah, finding a way around it. Well, this has been a great conversation. Is there anything we didn't touch on that you want to get out there?
The only other thing is that I have a book coming out.
Tell us.
I'm very excited about it.
Yeah, tell us about it.
It's really about overcoming those obstacles. So this is more of a personal development type of book. It's about overcoming. It's about finding your own personal inner warrior and how you can strengthen that warrior so that you can go up against that mean little voice. I call it the sneaky little bastard, which is procrastination. Also one of those things that always seems to stop us.
Yeah.
But how do we get over those quickly? How do we overcome? And how do we go out and just do really great things?
Love it. When does it come out?
Right now, it's supposed to come out in November.
Okay.
But there's all kinds of things going on in the industry, so that might slip to the right. But right now, it's tentatively November.
And do we have a title yet?
Becoming the Warrior.
Becoming the Warrior. Okay, so everybody, you heard it here first. Watch out for Becoming the Warrior this fall-ish. Well, where can people find you the most? What's the best way?
The best place to find me is probably on LinkedIn. So I can be found at Jenn Donahue, Jenn with 2 N's. And you can also just go to my website, www.jenndonahue.com. That's probably the best place to go. And I would look forward to hearing from anybody. I would love to hear your stories. Tell me about what you're doing to overcome your own imposter syndrome, self-doubt. I love hearing stories from other people and how they have just overcome their own obstacles.
Love it. Thank you for joining me today. Have a great rest of your day. Thanks so much for listening to today's episode of Message in the Middle. I hope you found something in this conversation that reminded you that you're not alone and that midlife isn't about winding down. It's about waking up. You're not done. You're just becoming. If this episode speaks to you at all, please share it with a friend who needs to hear it. And if you're enjoying the show, I'd be so grateful if you could take a moment to leave a review. It really helps other women find this community and this podcast. Until next time, take care of yourself.